Welcome to our discussion of Twin Peaks: The Return, episode 16, No Knock, No Doorbell. I am William, and with me is...
Sean, and I'm 100% today, especially after that episode.
I am the recapper. So in this episode, or this video, we're discussing episode 16 of Twin Peaks: The Return, which is the episode that finally delivered on the return of Coop. Something that a lot of people, myself included, were not sure we were going to get in the series, or maybe to the last few minutes or the last episode. But instead, we got it with the 2-part finale left coming up. So perfect timing, really, that the season has been about, it's called The Return, and it's kind of setting up all these different plot threads and where things are going.
I think I'd heard something about them describing this season before it aired. I think about Cooper's healing process.
Yeah.
Since he was, gone in the lodge for 25 years. So it is about kind of, I guess him kind of coming back to the world and kind of healing. And that's what we've spent this whole time. And we always had a question before, is he just going to pop out of the lodge and be like, everything's fine, let's go. And I think this was a much smoother way to handle it because he was aware of what was happening, but and he was able to be cued in on the world while not really being there.
He was able to observe it while not being a very active participant in the main story.
Somebody brought up the point, be like, so does Cooper know about internet porn yet, or 9/11, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. They said, Dougie Jones. He obviously knows through Dougie Jones about internet porn, but was he with? Does he know Dougie's? Does he know Dougie's existence?
Yeah.
We can talk about that with Diane because since she's a tulpa, kind of what she knows and what I guess the original Diane knows, because it seems like there's some parity there as well too.
Yeah, because it seems like, at least with the 2 Coopers and now the 2 Dianes, that, or at least the Diane being a tulpa or a doppelganger or a copy, we have not necessarily seen the original Diane.
She's a tulpa because she turned into the little seed thing,
yes.
Like Dougie Jones did.
So we don't know if we'll see Laura Dern again and see the original Diane, but it does seem that from the point that the copy is created of the tulpa or the doppelganger, that they do retain knowledge and information that existed up to that point. Or at least that's what can be inferred from the fact that that Evil Cooper knew about Philip Jeffries and Judy and things that happened to, Agent Dale Cooper before the lodge stuff. So the implication that you can take away from that is that from the point the tulpa is created, it has the knowledge and information of that person that they're created from. And then that can diverge from there because obviously, from what we've seen, when Cooper comes back and Mike tells him that, or the one-armed man tells him that the other one is still out there, if they both shared the same knowledge, they would both instantly know what's going on.
Yeah. So
it seems like from the point that the copy is created, it diverges and they no longer know. It's not like a shared consciousness. It's kind of just, if you have 2 video files and you create a copy, then you go and change the copy, like on your phone, if you duplicate a picture and you modify it, the original and the copy are then different. So I think that's what the implication is going on.
I have a small theory, I can talk about it later, but kind of about Diane's situation and even Audrey's and how they may relate with the tulpa thing. So, but we can kind of backtrack and start from the beginning because the beginning of the episode alone, it's not even the thing we jumped to talk about, but it's a major death.
Well, we see the episode start with Evil Cooper and Richard Horne arriving at the location, which we'd have to assume is in Twin Peaks because Jerry Horne eventually comes upon it. So they're in Twin Peaks. And
unless Jerry Horne has migrated across North America by now.
He's been out in the woods for a while, so there's no telling how far he's went. But, Evil Cooper has the coordinates and says that he has, from 3 people or from 3 sources, he got coordinates and 2 of them match. So what should he do? And Richard Horne says, check the ones that match. And that's where they're at. And he has Richard go with the GPS to the point that it actually gets to the specific spot.
And it seems like, too, that Richard, originally Richard pulled a gun on him and he said,
Yeah.
get in the car, I'll explain. Seems like we missed all of that explanation.
Yeah, if there was any.
And whatever it was, either Cooper was threatening, like, you better do, you have to do what I tell you or I'll kill you prior to them getting out of the car, or he convinced him along the way. Maybe he told him his relationship.
He's like, I'm your father.
Yes, yeah.
Richard, I am your father.
I was waiting for that moment.
Yeah.
And then he said, they alluded to the fact, hey, I'm 25 years your senior.
Yeah.
And then, which kind of made you think, okay, that semi-confirms it. And then he says, like,
explicitly says,
goodbye, my son. Yeah.
So then Richard goes on the rock, and when he gets there, once he gets to this spot, he starts being electrocuted or disintegrated or fried or
it's
definitely out of existence.
Yeah, it was definitely something otherworldly because the way he kind of disintegrated from there up and left his head, and then it poofed.
The question is, has he been transported somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
When he end up in the lodges, was it a trap that was set to disintegrate Evil Cooper? Was it simply something that requires another worldly being to access? I think it's more of a trap that was set. So the question is, what are the two coordinates or the source of the two coordinates that led there? Would it be...
I think it's Ray and Jeffries.
Philip Jeffries and Ray.
Yeah, because they were working together.
Yeah.
And then Diane, she seems to be triggered by him or almost under some sort of control, because you see her switch back and forth as far as consciousness and kind of, it's almost like she gets triggered sometimes.
When she gets like the messages that are sourced from Evil Cooper, whether it's directly from him or through an intermediary. Because there's been some discussion like all caps versus not caps, and the messages varying. But
so, and after Richard dies, he's just like, oh, like he knew that was going to happen.
The second that it started happening, he's like, well,
yeah,
that was a trap. And
Jerry Horne is like freaking out. He comes running over the hill and he's like, people. So obviously he hasn't came across anybody since whatever episode he started, off into the woods.
He's been in the woods since like episode 2 or 3?
Early on.
So he was in person with... Was he in person with Ben or just on the phone?
No, they were. Yeah, he was in Ben's office and he was talking to him.
And then he went out in the woods. So since then he's been searching.
And so I mean, and then he thinks the binoculars did it. Remember, he's like bad. And does he know that's his nephew? Like, does he know he just saw his? Probably not, because he wasn't.
He didn't react more specifically,
and he wasn't viewing it through the right end of the binoculars.
So there's the question of, does he know who that was? Does he understand what happened? But Richard Horne is no more, and when you start to feel possible sympathy for him of being disintegrated by his father, if you just remember, he was responsible for the death of that young boy. He was threatening sexual assault and all kinds of violence against women at the Bang Bang bar, and threatening and criminalizing his grandmother and threatening her and throwing her around, and so not a good person. And he tried to kill what was her name?
Yes, in the trailer. Can't think of her name. We all were wrapped up in her name because of the letter. Like, is this the right person? And it was, I can't believe we've already forgotten her name by now. But yeah, he tried to kill her. And then really that thread kind of, they obviously never caught him, but that thread kind of doubled back on Chad and his involvement in it. So I mean, that pretty much confirms that is his son, unless he was saying like S-U-N because he was glowing. But so, again, like
Miriam is the name of the woman that Richard Horne attempted to kill and failed.
Yeah. So, it was again, almost didn't expect Richard to go this soon, just because he has been built up. He has been alluded to as being Cooper's son.
He's the son of the evil Cooper and Audrey. So you thought there was some importance there, unless he ends up in some other, plane of existence and comes back into play.
And really, too, his importance could also be to kind of show maybe how Audrey is why she's in the state she's in now. Yeah. You don't know, and she could have a bigger role to play. It seems that she may have a very big role to play, or at least her existence is very much tied to at least Evil Cooper or something else based on what we saw at the end of this episode.
Yeah. So then Cooper then knows that the third set of coordinates is one to go to. Then we see
Chantel.
Yeah, we
and Hutch.
see Hutch and Chantel go to the residence of Dougie Jones, so he is the intended target, and he's not there. And then the FBI comes to his house and looks for him. He can't find him, so they go to the Lucky 7 Insurance Company, and we see that
The thing too about Chantel and Hutch, when I first watched it, they mumbled, and today, like I told you earlier, today I watched it with the subtitles on. The first thing Tim Roth says to her is, "Did you see that bird this morning?" And she's like, "Yeah," or whatever. And it just seems like it's a throwaway line, and they've had a lot of throwaway lines, seemingly
about food mostly.
Yes, yeah. But part of me after on the rewatch, knowing what it is and knowing what happens, my mind jumped to the bird at the opening, the like iconic Twin Peaks bird at the opening of the series, and it's like this is a return to that old Cooper, that like early '90s vibe of Twin Peaks because he's back. Is it kind of like foreshadowing, like, okay, the Twin Peaks bird is back?
We're
like
gonna see the mill. And all
this
that
is
stuff.
the Twin Peaks is kind of returning now, just because it's such it is a throwaway line, but there's been so many things in the show that are so deliberate and kind of little jokes and kind of foreshadowing and kind of names that are just callbacks. Like somebody was pointing out that Sonny Jim is a name in Elephant Man, which I didn't even realize. So yeah, and their whole dynamic, like they've been two of my favorite characters because I love those actors so much.
Yes.
And Chantel is very animated. Tim Roth really laid back. His accent is, I don't know, it's endearing, even if it's not totally maybe accurate all the time. Like it's.
Well, yeah, you have like an interesting mixture. So you kind of have them built up where you think that some huge showdown's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so Dougie, or Good Coop, is in the hospital in a coma, and the Mitchum brothers come to visit, and they bring gifts, and they ask for the keys from Janie to their house so they can go and help out and give them some stuff. And so at the Jones house, you have Hutch and Chantel camped out. You have the FBI camped out, and then you have the Mitchum brothers show up in a limo with all the girls in pink delivering stuff to their house.
And Chantel says, "The fucking circus."
And then a accountant shows up and tells them that they're blocking his driveway. And then like they argue like they're not blocking it, or if they are, they're not they're just close to the edge. And then he says he's gonna move his car, which means he's gonna drive it into the van.
Car.
And then Chantel shoots a round off. He gets out with his like little Uzi gun and then starts a massive shootout.
He tags her once. They try to flee. Well, they shoot the shotgun at him too. They try to flee. The FBI is just like watching it because it's the incompetent guy.
Well, it's
who is
the
awesome.
incompetent FBI, but it's also with all this going on, them getting in the middle of it would likely only make it worse. So then when Hutch and Chantel try to drive away, the accountant pulls his gun out, unloads in the van, killing both of them.
I hated that moment.
So it ended that plot thread. So there was no showdown between them and Cooper or Dougie or anybody or,
and the Mitchums,
Bushnell or the Mitchums. They're just kind of, they had their guns drawn looking, and they're like, when the FBI agents get out, then they put their guns back and, realize, okay, let's...
What do they say something along the lines of like, what the hell's up with this neighborhood? He's like, people are stressed.
Yeah, he's like, people are stressed, which is kind of also like, could be a metaphor for people watching the show. They're stressed at this point.
And two, maybe like, seemingly the increased amount of random acts of violence in the world since, since the Twin Peaks days when basically everything was surrounding one murder. Yeah. And then the amount of violence and murder in this series. Yeah. And just the graphic violent nature of it, like this very much felt like
the body count was much higher.
Coen Brothers or Tarantino death scene for them, like the way he's just getting ripped up inside the van, and it seems like Chantel and Hutch, it's almost they were there to kind of clean up some plot lines. They were devised. He sent them.
They killed Duncan Todd.
They killed Duncan.
The warden.
They closed that off. Closed the warden off. We don't know who Mr. Strawberry is for sure. Yeah. Probably never will. And then, they went to kill Dougie. And really, they weren't going to find Dougie. If everything played out the way it did, chances are they were never going to find Dougie. If they waited there all day, he would have been on a plane to Spokane.
Well, yeah.
By the end of the
if
day,
everything was played out as it did on the show, Dougie was never coming back to
so
that
it was
house.
really just like an entertaining way to end that plot line, I think. Unless that Polish guy was a backup plan from the firemen, just like he gave Freddie that glove.
Yeah.
Maybe he gave him a Uzi and was like, if people are parked in your driveway, make them move, and if they don't, light them up.
Yeah, so he saw, and then too, I know there's some people that said like the interactions between Hutch and Chantel were kind of reminiscent of Tim Roth's character from Pulp Fiction, the opening segment and the kind of like the bookend to Pulp Fiction. So
she's so great. The scenes with them, this one too.
So,
her getting like pissed off that there was no more Cheetos,
yeah.
and him like, "Are you on the rag?" And she's like, "What if I fucking was?"
And some of the I saw some people wondering if David Lynch was doing any type of throwback or references to Tarantino with any of this, because some of this stuff has felt a bit Tarantino-esque.
Yeah.
And then there's been throwbacks, like they even had the footage from Sunset Boulevard in it in the prior episode, and there's been other things that showed up.
And I've heard some people, I didn't only watch a couple episodes, but somebody said this feels like a Breaking Bad scene as well. And Lynch is also apparently a fan of Breaking Bad.
Yeah, I mean, you can see a lot of influence of different things in this, but with Lynch with everything going so far out of left field, a lot of times maybe it's just coincidental.
Yeah.
But then like I said, so you have Dougie still in the hospital. And then you have, after Evil Cooper or Doppel Cooper sees Richard Horne die, then he sends a text message that shows a smiley face and then it says all.
Well, before that, we get the Cooper waking up scene.
Yes.
Because the only reason I know is because I was watching again today, and I remember like the Twin Peaks theme ends that scene and it rolls into Diane beautifully, and then the tone totally changes.
Well, he sends the text message at the beginning or at the end of that first scene.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then, so Cooper is in the room, Bushnell's there, and he hears like a hum or music or sound, and he leaves the room. And then we see the one-armed man or Mike there, and then Cooper wakes up. and
is 100%. He just like snaps out of it.
He's, back, like, he's lucid. You see all the movement in his eyes, like he's Cooper. And then the one-armed man,
he starts taking care of business immediately,
Yeah, and he's like, "Are you back?" He's like, "I'm back 100%."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Finally." And then, he tells him he's like, the other one is still out there, so implying that the double, he's like, he hasn't come back in, and he gives him the owl ring for his protection,
which we heard Ray was supposed to put it on his finger when he
Evil
killed
Cooper.
him.
And then Cooper asks if he has the seed, which he says he does, and then he gives them a lock of his hair. So the assumption there is that he's given them his hair to use with the seed to create a tulpa or another Dougie to send back with Janie E and Sonny Jim. And then since the tulpa or the double will be created from the good Cooper, it should be a good guy and more in line with who he is. Versus the Dougie being spawned from evil Cooper, which would allow him to be the womanizer and the not great guy that he was. So hopefully, Janie E and Sonny Jim will get a more Cooperized version of Dougie to have in their lives.
I had saw something too. I don't know if there was like one of those like wiki guides or something. Like apparently those how-to guides that people can make on their own and submit. There's one like how to create a tulpa, and it was like had these rules, and I totally forgot about it, but I wish I could find it now. This apparently is an answer to one of those. It was like. Your tulpa will feel very real, and if you create them right, they'll probably have deviations from your plan that you didn't expect. If you try to create them based off a real person, you'll probably be disappointed, or they might have identity issues because they're a copy. And really, we saw that with
Diane.
Diane, she's like, "Who am I?" Or I'm not me and stuff.
Yeah, so we see
and Audrey too. Kind of jumping forward to what I was going to talk to later.
Yeah,
she says, She says along the lines of "I don't know who I am" or "Who am I?" in the previous episode. So I think that's a tulpa, personally.
Yeah. So we see Cooper. He's lucid. He's back to being fully aware. Janie E and Sonny Jim come in the room and he talks to them and he seems aware to remember everything that happened during his time as Dougie. So then he talks
and he's
to them.
Immediately like, Bushnell, hand me those sandwiches.
Yes.
Like just like he's like Lucy, hand me some coffee and donuts.
And then Janie E and Sonny Jim go to get the car. He puts his suit on. He gets dressed. He eats. He asks Bushnell for his the gun that he has on him.
Which he would always be able to tell who was packing in the original
Yeah.
series too, just by looking at him.
He asked him for the 38 snub nose or
Yeah.
whatever, which I think is a gun that Walter White used on Breaking Bad, which may be,
Oh.
if I remember correctly. So then he gets the gun. He tells Bushnell that, he thanks him for being a good guy. He needs to talk to the Mitchum brothers, who he calls, and asks to gas up a jet to go to Spokane, Washington. And then Bushnell says that the FBI was looking for him, so he gives him a note to give to Gordon Cole. And then he's like, "I am the FBI."
Yes, and then the music kicks in.
The
like,
music
yeah, that was
swells
that was like one of the few moments I've like cheered at my TV.
So
And yeah, like no show or series has ever got me into it as much as this whole series.
You had to wait for, there was 15 episodes before this one you had to wait through to get Cooper back.
That's what I told my wife. I was like, yeah, 25 years, and now we've set 15 hours later. Like, even though it was 20, we had to wait 15 hours for this one moment, but it was such a wonderful payoff. And it was so much better than just bringing him back from day one.
Yeah.
Like, it was another, like, hero's journey, but not the journey any of us ever expected from it.
Well, he had to gain, he was going from being, the shell that just repeated what everyone else said to getting back to being Cooper, 1% to 2% at a time.
Yes, yeah. And I love Dougie, I like him from the beginning. But yeah, of course, you're like, oh, this is funny. All right, well, when's Cooper going to come back?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, okay, you get a couple episodes in.
Well, too, it's just...
And then you just kind of, then you're like, all right, well, this is what it is. We may never get him back, so...
Now you see the setup for... So he's going back to Twin Peaks. When they go to the Silver Mustang hotel or casino, whatever, with the Mitchums.
He drives very well, too.
Yes. Sonny Jim is impressed by how well he drives.
Yeah.
And Janie E's surprised that he wanted to drive. So then he gets them there, tells Janie E and Sonny Jim that, they felt his heart enjoying all this stuff. And, it's a touching scene. And Janie E realizes, that he's not Dougie. And, he tells them that Dougie will come back. And kind of has, a goodbye with them.
That was a really great scene. And I almost felt like...
And it tied off, what was going to happen with Cooper and Janie E.
And we knew kind of what he was aware of. That he was basically aware. Even when he got up from the hospital bed. You know what I mean? He, hugs Sonny Jim. He looks at Diane kind of lovingly. You know what I mean? Janie E. And so I almost feel like this scene was, almost enough closure for me for Cooper. Say something crazy happened and he did die right away or something. I almost feel like, we were all talking about, he's been in there for 25 years. He's not going to be the same person. He's lost those years. And it's almost like no matter what happens now, he got to come back and kind of live a, somewhat of a normal life. At least he had a wife and a kid.
Yeah, some semblance of a happy life.
And it seemed to make him happy. I mean, he got emotional at times, looking at Sonny Jim and stuff. So
but, Janie E mostly was excited about the material wealth that he brought to them.
Yeah.
And he should have been thanks for the sax.
Yeah, I was thinking he was I haven't forgot. Yeah, I mean, I thought that was an amazing scene too. This episode was just so many amazing payoffs and scenes that have build-ups that it just, I couldn't believe how much was packed into this one.
So then on top of that, you had... So I guess we can say the other stuff. So then Diane gets the text message, and she's like, oh God, Coop, I remember, and sends a text message with coordinates. So maybe this is told out of turn, and she was the third set of coordinates that Cooper was talking about. But no, that wouldn't make any sense because he said he had three. He said he had three, so he sent the message after that. So maybe
somebody said she may have remembered the end of it. She knew part of it or something.
Yeah.
Maybe she remembered the last digits.
We hadn't seen her send the coordinates previously to him.
Yeah.
We had seen her look things up. So possibly, maybe if somebody's, eagle-eyed and went back and looked, when she looked up on the maps episodes ago, the coordinates was the area that she looked up, the rock that was in this episode. Or is there a way to even tell if that's where it was? Who knows? Maybe she was the third set, and then she sent more coordinates. Whatever it was, after she sends that, she's going up to the room where Gordon and Albert and Tammy are.
That whole walk was
incredible. It's playing the same music that played for Evil Cooper previously, correct? I think that music was a music key for him
and it was
earlier.
a David Lynch remix in the credits. But
I thought it was a similar music
Yeah.
rhythm or notes or melody to what was playing in episode
It
1, I
feels
believe.
like a very slow.
When Cooper was in the Mercedes going to look for Ray and
Yeah.
everything. I think
you're right too. Another thing too is her text. I think was slightly different, just like it has been.
Yeah.
Like there's a period or something missing, and two, the time doesn't match up again.
Because it was nighttime where that all occurred.
Yeah.
and-
So it seems like something's going to New Mexico, or sorry, going to Mexico and then coming back to her. Maybe I'm not for sure, but I'm sure it's all intentional. But it just made me, for a second, when we were shooting Volumes of Blood, we were sending some text and it was supposed to be a certain time. And we had the hardest time because we were trying to change the times on the phone.
Yeah.
But when you do that, you can't send text.
Yeah.
Obviously, they probably just...
Well, which is interesting because we did the other short film Ride and I changed the time on phones and it worked.
I wonder what... Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure, that's all intentional. But yeah, like that whole walk, like just because they show the flash of that gun.
Yeah.
And two... Prior to this, there is a shot of Gordon that flashes in between, I think, the Dougie stuff.
Yeah, when before Dougie wakes up, when he's in the hospital and you see the machines, Gordon is in the room just watching the instrumentation and kind of has just a look on his face.
Yeah, and they seem to be going kind of wild, and he seems very concerned. And jumping back real quick to Dougie Cooper in the hospital, they bring up electricity several times.
Yeah.
They're like, was it electricity? Like the Mitchums does. Sonny Jim talks about it, So, there's obviously electricity is a huge role in this. And, that was just something that also drew my attention, that they brought it up multiple times. It wasn't just like, oh, he got electrocuted. We know David Lynch is obsessed with electricity.
Yeah.
But, there's something along with that too. But Gordon Cole seems to have known and suspected what was coming with Diane.
Well, with Diane, from early on, they were suspicious of her. And when she came to the room, she told him...
And he knew she was at the door. He was just like, come in, Diane. Like, Gordon was keyed in on a level that I don't know if he ever has. We've seen him before.
Like, was it to do with his, the amplified hearing aid, so he knew like her walk and everything?
Maybe, but then again, there was gunshots in the room, and that didn't seem to faze him.
Was it the instrumentation was indicating something was going to happen, so he knew it was going to be Diane? What exactly? But he did seem to be aware. He himself did not have his hand near a pistol or drawn.
He was very closely watching her as she was talking,
and
he was looking her up and down. And I think he had them at the ready because he knew, and he seemed very nervous. Or, you know what I mean? Just kind of, he seemed so heightened and not relaxed.
It wasn't the standard like, hello, Diane.
No, he knew this was kind of a reckoning on somebody's end.
And so she's like, do you want to know what happened about the night that I saw Cooper? And then she says he came, no knock, no ring, or no door knock, no ring, like, or whatever the title of the episode was, or the quote for the episode. And he came in and talked to her and he kissed her. She said it was only the second time that had happened, so it implied it had happened before. But she was able to recognize that he was not the same, and she saw him.
And so real quick, too, something else that I saw a connection. She earlier, whenever she saw him in the prison, she said, "Who are you?"
Yeah. And
Laura says that to Bob when she's on top of him.
Yeah.
And he's also raping her. She says, "Who are you?" the same way.
Yeah.
So it seems like, that's... Obviously, it was the Bob, inside evil Mr. C, possibly.
Yeah, so, and then she explains that, first he had asked her about FBI business before, then he kissed her, and she realized it wasn't right, and saw in his eyes and all that stuff, and then he raped her. So, it all seems like a truthful retelling of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had said something about, she wasn't her, she was in a sheriff's station. Well, he said first that he took her to the convenience store. So that we had saw in previous episodes. That's likely where he took her and then went there and did something.
So
created a tulpa or a copy of her.
That's what I think. I think that's where the split was for her.
And then she said that, she wasn't her. She was in a sheriff's station.
Mm-hmm.
So then that brings to mind, so does she have a connection to Nido, who is in the sheriff's station now?
Because everybody points out, their names are almost spelled this. If you rearrange the letters with
the
anagram
or whatever.
But... or is she, is she in the sheriff's station at another time? Just
Did he take her to the Twin Peaks Sheriff Station at some point in the past?
Yeah,
So
did
there's-
she? Yeah, I mean, you've heard characters say like, "I'm in the Black Lodge,"
Yeah.
or and sometimes it's people speaking through this other person,
So it's-
or
So the other question is: so are the coordinates that she gave to Evil Cooper, do those point to the Twin Peaks Sheriff Station where Nido is? That puts him on a path to go there, where Freddy has the green glove to possibly intercede in that, or to have some involvement in this confrontation.
I watched.
From Wave 3 News, heavy precipitation.
Sorry, we've got weather alerts in our area. I watched that scene again when Albert meets Diane for the first time, or finds her.
He goes after her.
And, because the Tulpas so far, even the Doppels, they all look similar. Dougie Jones was a more disheveled, larger, and maybe he became overweight over time. Maybe, who
Since
knows?
he didn't have the goodness of Cooper and the innate.
But you would think that nationalities wouldn't change. Then again, Nido, I mean, we really haven't seen her eyes. She just seems Asian. And Diane has those, everybody has been talking about, it's almost been a controversy about her appropriation of her Asian style. And it kind of made me think like, okay, what's the deal there?
Or two, we've seen characters change because there's the evolution of the arm, the man from another place into the brainstem on the tree.
But you would have thought that, Albert would have had some sort of reaction when she turned around. Rewatching, his face is just like, oh, Diane. It's exactly who he expected. So that's the only reason why I'm like, can it be Nido? But I mean, we really haven't seen her eyes.
There could be some innate connection, or maybe Diane isn't Nido, but it could be similar to how Bob takes over, a negative spirit takes over a person and comes through. Maybe Nido has that connection.
And are we ever going to hear about her being half sisters with
Janie E? At this point, I think the Janie E and Sonny Jim stuff is done. Or maybe there'll be a scene of them seeing Dougie at some point towards the end, like the new Dougie. But I don't know that. I think since Cooper's going, left Las Vegas and is going to Twin Peaks, I don't think we'll see him interact with them again. And I just don't know what the connection there is with Diane and Nido. Like I said, is the coordinates that she gave Evil Cooper the Twin Peaks Sheriff Station? Is that where he's going now? And was Nido what he was after? And two, we still have the aspect of the note from Briggs for Bobby said October 1st and October 2nd. Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen them go back for October 2nd.
Yeah.
So is this all still within October 1st? We don't know.
Yeah.
And so we have all that element.
And back to the Diane stuff, that scene, just on a emotional level and the way it was playing out, not just plot-wise, her walk up to that room, and then every time she reached in her purse, you were just waiting. You're like, oh,
the dramatic irony of you knew she has a pistol,
and she'd pull out her cigarettes, and then her phone or whatever, and it was, and she kept going back and forth. It seemed like she was the honest, true Diane when she's recounting that horrible story. And again, her performance this season has blown me away. I mean, she's always been incredible, but I have loved this interpretation of Diane, whatever it is, a tulpa or whatever, just her performance of it.
It makes you wonder too, because the implication, the Evil Cooper had sent her messages about Las Vegas, so she did tell Gordon and Albert and everybody that her sister-in-law, or not her sister, half-sister, whatever, was Janie E. So was that the cue for her to send them down the trail of Vegas? But the FBI agent, the office, was not able to find Dougie Jones or what have you. And two, if Evil Cooper had sent Hutch and Chantel to kill Dougie Jones, what's the purpose of them going to Vegas and finding, if his plane went all the way through, just finding the dead body of Dougie Jones? It's unclear exactly what all that plan was or what all it consisted of. Or was he just simply wanting to know, are they aware of Vegas yet? Because he didn't want them to intercede Dougie Jones being killed. They want him to get him in custody before his plane could go through. So it's all kind of unclear exactly what the level of awareness there was, but that message really did seem to be a trigger for her, kind of like an end game, okay, take out Gordon and Albert. Because she went to the room, and then when she finally pulled the gun out, Albert and Tammy were on top of it, and they were able to shoot her before she was able to get a shot off.
And then she flew off like a balloon.
And then she flew off to the Black Lodge or
and
to
she
the Red
disappeared
Room.
like the story of the Blue Rose woman.
She disappeared. She was in the room, and then Mike or the one-armed man asks or tells her that she was manufactured, just like he said to Dougie. And
she says, "I know, fuck you."
Yeah. So
and she speaks forward.
And then she disintegrates into the sphere of the seed again. So she is the tulpa of Diane is no more. And if we actually see another, the real Diane, who knows? Or does she have connection to Nido? What's going on that? Like, there's 2 episodes left.
This episode, we lost Richard, Chantel, Hutch, Diane.
And we essentially lost Dougie, and it became
and Dougie.
Cooper.
We had 2 seasons of Cooper before.
Yeah,
I'm happy to have pretty much a season of Dougie, and really we have 2 more hours left. We can easily surpass the amount of Agent Del Cooper that was in Firewalk with me with these 2 hours, because we've already almost had enough of as much as him that was in that film.
And 2, with these 2 episodes being left, there's enough plot threads. You would think that in terms of, so we'll get to the Audrey stuff in a second, but with so you now set up so that the 2 Coopers are going to or will be near the same location, and Cooper seems to be on top of it and knows what to do, and he has the ring, and he will not make the same mistakes that Ray did or that others.
I'm really curious to see if there's going to be a traditional showdown, because this isn't that type of show, really. You know what I mean? This isn't like Lord of the Rings or something.
Like, if anything, it would be Cooper possibly outsmarting evil Cooper, or cooperating with the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department and Bobby and Andy. And not ending how you think, just like season 2 ended. Nobody expected it to end that way. So you keep coming back to the fact they spent so much time on Freddy in these end episodes when time became far more important than it was early on, because there's fewer left. Him being in the prison next to or close to the cell where Nido is, you think that he has to play someone in this end game with that glove. And he's going to just hold his hand while they put it on there. I don't know. It's going to be weird if there's a traditional struggle on some level. You know what I mean? Because the original show had that, but the original show, well, for some elements, the stuff with, the Renaults and but stuff with, the kind of the bigger story stuff, it's going to be weird if there's a traditional showdown and we're not thrown into a Red Room type situation. You know what I mean? Where it's like, all right, we are out of our sorts, and now we have no control over where we think this is going, because they are doing their own thing. I feel like it's going to maybe end up there, because we've seen it could end traditionally, but we've seen so many plot lines where we think, oh, it's going to end this way. And all of a sudden, boom, Richard's gone. Chantel and Hutch are gone. They're not afraid to just take a left turn, get rid of this stuff, and then focus on what's more important. The only things we've been shown throughout the course of the show to this point is that to kill, or the thing we've learned is, once the evil Cooper is incapacitated, the ring needs to be put on him, and we know that, and then we know that he's after something to coordinate the coordinates indicated, which we would think is Nido, because somehow she has some importance to the lodges. And that's been his end goal, since very early on, since almost as soon as we saw him. And staying out of the lodge, he's not back in it; he's still out of the lodge. So, but he's been obsessed with that. All the other characters have kind of been able to deviate. Dougie's been doing whatever, and Gordon Cole, he's having women in his room, whether or not she was a message, giving a message. But he has been having one goal, and everybody is collateral. Well, and with Red and all the stuff with the drugs going on. Yeah, what is up with Red? The question is how much. So is Red something that's an entity of the lodge? Is he tied into the other dimension type things, and the drugs that he has are somehow connected to all that? So will he tie into this end game at all, and have been a pawn of evil Cooper and of the Black Lodge and things like that, of evil spirits and the woodsman and the convenience store? Or is it more of just a plot thread? Because you still have this stuff with Shelley and Becky. We're not sure, based on the prior episode with Steven and Gersten, if Becky's dead or if that's what they're referring to. So in the remaining 2 episodes, we need to have this kind of stuff with Shelley and Red and Bobby and Becky kind of, I would assume we would come back to some extent. With the log lady, with Margaret, she's passed away, so that plot thread is closed. We still haven't really seen much resolution with Ben Horne and the character played by Ashley Judd,
or her husband,
or
that
her
was
husband,
introduced.
that all hasn't been tied off. With Carl at the Fat Trout Trailer Park, that all hasn't been tied off. So you think that he will tie into the stuff with Steven because they were in the woods and he was the one that the jogger or the walker came to. So all those like
Are the Wismans going to be killed by golden shovels?
yeah. So there's all these plot threads that are around Twin Peaks that you would think are going to tie back into this ultimate storyline, and that could be part of how our expectations are subverted of how it ends. Like, what if it's Andy that's one of the ones who helps end that because he was the one that got the information in the lodge? Or if it's, one of these smaller characters that you wouldn't think has any importance in these greater schemes is tied into this end game.
Well, too, there's been something going on with the girls in pink. And, he even says girls were taking a plane ride. They're going there. And Candy, something's very off with her. Even, people were pointing out whenever she says there was so much traffic here. Yeah. And that's when all the traffic's going on in Twin Peaks. Yeah. And again, like Candy, Sadie, and something else. Their names rhyme. Apparently, it's like the same names that are in a Ren 10 book or something. Again, with the references. But if you take out that first letter, they're all anagrams for Diane again. And they mention about them having hearts of gold. Like, what's going on with them? Like, they almost seem like...
Are they tulpas?
Tulpas, yeah. Something along those lines.
But the Mitchums don't seem like they're necessarily tied into the otherworldly elements.
They almost seem like they rescued them because they are like hearts of gold. And they have,
There's a lot of talk about metals and golds and elements.
Yes, and electricity. So they're all going there too. Somebody pointed out this thing that seemed totally irrelevant, but they were talking about... what is the place where the Black Lodge is at, the entrance of it in Twin Peaks? I can't think of the name of it, but they were like, there's 12 trees around it. Yeah. And there's 12 people converging on Twin Peaks. There's like a team of 12. Well, too. And then there's the 12 Crusaders or whatever.
Because Cooper says they're going to go to the Twin Peaks Sheriff Station. And they said they're not exactly walking in places like that. And Sheriff said that he'll, they have hearts of gold, and he'll tell them about that.
Cooper is like being like Cooper when he's just like, he praises his friends. Yes. He's always giving compliments and just, he's trying to make, he's spreading the love around and it's honest love. It's not, he's not bullshitting people. He's not trying to, like fill them up and just like use it for his own gain. He really is just like celebrating people that are good.
So we have all those elements, and then, so we go to the Roadhouse and we see...
Well, we get the Eddie Vedder performance
the Edward Severin III or whatever. So the Eddie Vedder, like his birth name. And he gives his performance. Because at first I'm like, that sounds like Eddie Vedder. It's like, oh, wait a minute, he was on the casting announcements way back. This is Eddie Vedder. And he gives a performance, and then that goes on.
Well, have you listened to the lyrics of that song? Really?
No. Not beyond the episode.
Yeah, so I watched it again today, put on the subtitles. Somebody mentioned, later on we figure out, Audrey, she seemed to have been stuck in an earlier era because of the stuff on The Office and all that. There were theories on that. And they're like, Pearl Jam was like 91 or 90 or something.
Yeah, early 90s.
And they were like, okay, Eddie Vedder, he started in Seattle. So maybe maybe it was alluding to the fact that he used that name to play around that area at that time, so she knew him from back then, or one of the nurses was a fan of Eddie Vedder. But listening to the lyrics, I think it was a song he wrote, but let's see, offered a hand of a disembodied man, so I don't know, no head. Gone, I am who I was, I will never be again. So that almost sounds like a tulpa or her shattered self. Because this song sounds a lot like Audrey. At first, I was like, is this about Cooper when it started? Running out of sand. So something else somebody pointed out was on Charlie's desk, there was an hourglass, and they said it looked like there was sand in the top, and it wasn't going down. Like time wasn't moving. Yeah. And then stare at my reflection to the bone, which is at the end of this episode. She's staring at her reflection. Let's see here. I am, who I was, that will never come again, running out of sand, fearful of dramas, there will be no dreams tonight, dead by dinner, no resort, features, let's see, yeah, I mean, basically, it keeps going back to the, I am, who I was, I'll never be again, and then, no sand, so, that, watching it the second time and seeing that scene, it was like, that was almost like a way more emotional than I expected, because it was like, tragic for Audrey's character and what's possibly going on
Because she
with
said
her.
before that she didn't feel like herself or things like that in prior episodes. So her and Charlie get to the Roadhouse finally.
And she doesn't have
after
her
the
jacket.
performance. And they walk in, and then they're not there for very long when she's kind of looking around, and Charlie orders a drink, and then they introduce the Audrey dance, and then it brings back the song from the music cue from the original series. Everybody clears the dance floor, and she does a dance reminiscent of like one of those first couple episodes of the original series where she danced at the diner at the Double R. And it's kind of this very surreal thing. So you're like, okay, this is obviously not.
And they call it what it is, like on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Audrey's dance.
And it's very obviously not like a real thing. There's something else going on. And then during...
And I think the guy who's introducing that,
yeah,
I think he's the actor that played the jumping man in Firewalk with Me.
Yeah.
So it's like, is
the
there...
been the MC at the Roadhouse.
Yeah, is there a reason for that? Like, is him being part of that existence?
And he introduced it. So he introduced the dance. She dances for a while. And then somebody interrupts and attacks someone else, like saying something about, like, that was my wife. So, like, like some type of spat over infidelity or something like that. And then she, Audrey runs to Charlie, telling her to get her out of there. And then we kind of see her in, like, a white, bright room looking in a mirror, kind of distraught with, like, makeup on and stuff like that. So it kind of calls back to the end of the original series with Cooper looking in the mirror. It's in a brightly lit room, so it could be something to do with like the White or Black Lodge or some like otherworldly location, or it could be in New York where there's the glass box, and Charlie could be the guy you see talking to Cooper, and she could be in some type of institution there.
Yeah, that... I hadn't really heard that before, but that because people kept bringing up, oh, she was in a coma. It's like, well, no, because she kind of woke. Would you wake up from a coma looking into a mirror, unless it's like another hallucination, or oh yeah, she's in a mental hospital, like they were talking about the nut house and everything. Yeah. Unless that was a figment of her imagination too, and all of that Billy stuff was in the Roadhouse.
Yeah.
But again, they wouldn't have mirrors in a typical mental hospital.
And it also calls into question how much of the Roadhouse this season has been real world events versus imagined dream state type things. But the amount of characters we've seen interact in the Roadhouse that we've seen in other situations, such as James and Shelley and others, would seem to indicate that maybe that specific instance of the Roadhouse with Audrey was the imagined one and the rest were real, but it has a lot of the same trappings as those other episodes. So it just brings into question, what in the Roadhouse was real, whether that informs the greater overall story. Was all of the gossip between these characters we've never seen before about other characters you don't know figments of Audrey's imagination?
Well, sometimes you have stuff in your dreams where it's like, I'm just hearing about people or seeing people in your dreams that you've never really know, and they seem like, why am I thinking about that? It seems like nonsense, and it normally is.
But I think that...
And does she have a connection to what is happening in the real world? Is some of that actually happening, and maybe she's conscious of it, and this will play into some sort of end game because maybe she's becoming aware and she's in New York and she's going to be a major player in New York?
Because maybe it's her wealth that was being exploited to fund the glass cube and all the video.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions about all that, but I think that this, indicating she's in some type of state that's not what it was on the surface, indicates that she will have more to do with the overall story with evil Cooper, the doppelganger Cooper, because I think that for her to be in this other state like that and not part of like just in Twin Peaks walking around, I think that
nobody's mentioned her at all.
Because Ben Horne didn't mention her mother didn't mention her, or
yeah, when things went wrong, she isn't the one that anybody calls. And Richard only mentioned her because he said, Audrey's my mom. That's the only reason why.
And then Cooper brought him along, or Evil Cooper brought him along. So I think that Audrey ties more into all this. I think, I would have to think she ties into some of the machinations and plot of Evil Cooper, because he would have a vested interest if she got pregnant with his child to keep sidelined throughout that.
So, yeah, the kind of thing I was going back to, my sort of theory was that the convenience store... Maybe the real Audrey and Diane are in one of those rooms in that motel lot or something. You know what I mean? Maybe they're stuck there. Stowed away. Mr. C created the Tulpa version of them to have some sort of control and use them as pawns as he's used other people.
To throw the trail and to manipulate people that will be coming after him.
Yeah. So the thing is, why is Audrey snapping out of it now? And
Could be that Cooper snapped out of it, and there's some connection
well,
there.
part of me thought, okay, if she was put there because she had Richard Horne,
Yeah.
because he impregnated her and he wanted to have some more control. And we don't know when this happened. This could have been years later. This could have been shortly after. We don't know. He could have replaced the tulpa in the hospital room, and then she came out not acting quite right, and people just assumed, oh, it was a side effect of the coma. We don't know. But when she sees herself in the mirror, people mention that you can kind of hear electricity or something.
And it's like blindingly white and bright and light.
Part of my theory was like, okay, did she snap out of this because Richard just died?
Yeah.
That was kind of a key why she was maybe she was a pawn or something. So maybe his death is started the release of her, and that's why we had him die now when he did the way he did, and he didn't play into the end game because that was his role in the story. There's definitely a reason for her waking up, it seems, and not just out of nowhere.
Well, I think this episode, like before, people were very frustrated with what was going on with Audrey because it seemed disconnected from everything else. But I think that this shows that she is connected to other elements of things going on between the lodges and the Coopers in these last couple episodes, and that she will have some greater purpose or have some greater importance to the plot than simply just being mentally unfit and in this kind of weird soap opera-esque side plot.
And so, the original Twin Peaks, the whole thing was the mystery of who killed Laura Palmer.
Yeah.
And once that was gone, as Lynch said, we just threw out the show because we solved the mystery we weren't supposed to solve.
Yeah.
Now we have Cooper back, and seemingly that's what this was about. And it's like, okay, we have Cooper back now. Yeah, evil Cooper's running around doing some bad stuff, but
needs to be put back in the lodge.
Okay, yeah, he needs to be put back in the lodge, and we only have 2 hours, so it's not like we're going to run a whole series of
cat and mouse games.
Yeah, cat and mouse. Coopers. So is this now going to lead to Cooper also on a mission to rescue Audrey? Is that kind of now a mission now because it's cliche to have the woman be rescued, but this is a very different situation.
Well, I think too, I think he'll be aware of what's going on. I think she'll be tied into the end game of what's going on, just because in the original series she was so important, and her and Cooper had a connection. So I think that it will be tied into this end because you have all these disparate storylines. Because like the Showtime president talking about another season, we haven't talked to Dave Lynch about that at all. And they have the final dossier and stuff. I think the show's going to ramp up the plot threads they intended to raise.
That's why I was so upset for Chantel and Hutch dying, honestly, because I was like, oh, I could have watched a whole season of them running around.
So I think we'll see a lot of the plot threads are more connected than we thought, and we'll see those crisscrossing of paths and how they're connected. And we'll see these characters on the sideline maybe be involved more. But then there's some things like Ed and Norma. They get Norma. Is their storyline kind of tied off with a bow and done? I don't think with as little time as there is left that we need to revisit that.
Yeah, what's going on with Ed? You think maybe part of that is a tulpa for some weird reason? I mean, everybody's saying everybody's a tulpa now, but is there something with Ed because of the reflection was changing?
Well, I think that part of
what was that?
Could just I don't know. I know
could be a time
when
thing.
He was at the diner, he told Bobby to join him because eating alone is one of the saddest things or something terrible not to do. And then he's later eating soup alone. So I think that was maybe just more a commentary on he lived a sad life.
Well, no, I'm talking about the reflection that moved.
I think that I don't know because there's been a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah,
with shadows.
Is it just time maybe,
or is it just that something is amiss in the town of Twin Peaks until all this stuff is resolved? Yeah. And then you also still have the Sarah Palmer stuff. What's going to happen with her?
Yeah.
You have will we get the revelation of who the young girl was, where the frog insect went into their mouth?
I've seen some people now zoom in and say it looks like the tail or the back leg of the frog when she pulls off her face.
Yeah.
They said they thought they saw that. They could see that. They're like, so maybe it is her, but that just seems totally ridiculous. That why New Mexico or whatever?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't line up. But then again, there was a lot of things in Secret History of Twin Peaks that didn't line up, and Mark Frost said, "Oh, there's a reason why it don't make sense."
Some of the stuff we haven't with some of the stuff with Nadine and Big Ed versus the series versus the book versus the show,
and Norma's family timeline apparently is different.
And stuff
her
with
family history.
So there's stuff that so with the amount of time we have left, I think we're gonna be firmly planted in Twin Peaks for the remainder of it because all all the stuff in the Dakotas and Vegas seem to be done. So I think we'll be in Twin Peaks for the remainder, and we'll see all these plot threads as much as they can, get tied off, or you'll at least see how they connect. So
I was really worried that Gordon Cole was going to die, because I'm like, man, if they kill off Gordon Cole, also like there's plenty they can do with the season 4 and just kind of, you know, explore some other things thematically or something.
With Gordon,
you know?
Albert, and Tammy, like when you saw Dan go into the room and the music cue and the flash of the gun, so I thought something was going to happen, but they were on top of it. You know, Tammy and Albert were. So I think if anything happens to either, you know, any of those 3 characters, you know, especially Gordon and Albert, it's going to be an end game scenario when they go to the town of Twin Peaks. And
maybe Albert sacrifices himself because they knew.
But then you have Hawk, and you have Frank Truman and Andy and all these people that are going to have to play into this at the end. And Bobby.
I really feel like if there was like nothing on the table at season 4, I really feel like what's going to happen, Cooper is going to sacrifice himself in some way, either life ending or back in the lodge or something.
I could see him becoming one of the good forces in the lodge.
Yeah. We kind of talked about that in our theory video, halfway through, like he's like a force for good. And another thing too, when Laura said, you know, in the red room, basically something like, you know, she looks just like me. Yeah, that sounds like a Tulpa situation. Yeah, you know, and that gold thing is almost like a seed. Yeah, you know, so is the Laura Palmer in the world? Was she set there to kind of set things in motion? Was she set there to almost as a trap to draw Bob out? Was she taking over, and the real Laura, or the original version of what we know as Laura, will she come out of the lodge? You know,
because there's like with Sarah and Laura Palmer, that has to play into it some.
Leland Palmer in the Red Room in this series says find Laura. Yeah. And is it finding Laura or finding the original? Like, we don't know, but
because we see the importance of episode 8 of her, importance of the overall story. So is it finding the essence of the real Laura Palmer is the key to solving it? Because they've said Laura's the one. So I think that Cooper finding the essence of the real Laura Palmer is what will help bring it all to a close. And I think the ending of Twin Peaks: The Return will maybe be more similar to episode 8 than these more straightforward episodes we've gotten recently, and like the back half of wrapping off the story ends.
Yeah, I mean, what they've achieved is already incredible, but on my end, I'm almost like I wish the last 2 would almost just be like a 2-hour movie and just be totally different, like, you know, just cinematically, you know, just like, oh, let's shift tones. We're still going to tell a straightforward story, as much as Twin Peaks is straightforward, not including episode 8, but like just kind of shift the feel of it now. But who knows? You know, maybe the whole show will shift feeling and feel like more classic Twin Peaks now.
Well, and two, like, we don't have David Bowie appearing from what we've seen, so we were not gonna get Philip Jeffries. He may still have involvement in this finale, but it seems like it'd be more of, you know, from the sidelines. Yeah. Things like that. So I think that can wrap up our discussion of this episode.
Yeah, I'm so sad. We've only got one more of these to do.
2 episodes that are going to be aired in the same night as a 2-hour block. Yeah. So after that will be over. I know, like, some people have suggested, like, maybe we go back and watch Firewalk with Me after having finished the series and rewatch it and reappraise it after knowing what we know. But the question that's always been in my mind the entire time is how much this was intended when Firewalk with Me was written and made versus how much was just backing this new story into material that already existed.
Yeah. I had heard, too, the new book takes place in between... it fills in some gaps timeline-wise between season 2 and this season. Yeah.
Because
which seems like the Secret History does a lot of that as well.
The Secret History filled in a lot of stuff before the original Twin Peaks and didn't really touch on too much after the show. So that we'll have to come back to when we read the book and kind of appraise things like that. Yeah. So
we appreciate everybody watching, too, all of these videos. Yeah. Yep, please subscribe. We got one more to go, so hang in there with us. Hopefully there'll be some more questions, and not everything will be answered because it's kind of just, it's fun to, again, Lynch is all about the mystery.
Well, I think, too, with Lynch, I would not be surprised to see him leave ends open and leave things open to interpretation, and then Mark Frost to come back with the book, The Final Dossier, and kind of put a little bit of more structure around some of the stuff.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get... I think we'll get a satisfying but not totally resolved conclusion, and that's the best I can hope for.
Bittersweet ending.
Yeah, and that's what I want out of this. I don't want forces of good versus evil, and they overcome on top of a mountain and throw the ring inside the volcano, and then everybody lives happily ever after in the White Lodge.
Kind of like a Star Wars type. Like it's not this like classic story. I think it's more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
But we've only got the 2 hours left, which will be
sad.
next week. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be back to discuss that, and then after that, we'll probably do some more. Loose ends, wrapping up stuff on Twin Peaks. Maybe go back and rewatching Firewalk with me, or
let's do the whole series
when the final dossier comes
let's
out.
do all Little Nicky coverage.
So yeah, we'll have more stuff out there too. But yeah, so I think that'll bring this discussion to a close. Thanks for watching.